Hello, it's Amy. Welcome to Strength Reversed, and thank you for joining me for another installment of Tarot Spiral. This is my series where I dive deeper and deeper into the cards and challenge my understanding of the tarot cards. And I haven't done an installment in quite a while, but this topic has been calling to me, and that is cards about boundaries. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because I really think boundaries, if you know at least one other person, are essential. And they've saved me countless times. And I will also do some smell-o-vision at the end of the runner-up candle. The winner was Mandarin Sun, which was, a throwback to summer. And this is Salt Water Orchid, which smells absolutely divine. And I will explain that. I will smell-o-vision it at the end, so stick around. So I went through some decks, and I did include some spooky decks that I'm just getting to know because it is that time of the year. And I compared some of the cards and pulled out the cards that really spoke to me about boundaries. And you could make a case for a lot of cards, either talking about healthy boundaries or the need for boundaries. And if you come up with any, put them in the comments, because I'm sure as soon as I stop this video, I'm gonna go, oh, of course, I should have said this or that. One of my favorite expressions is that no is a complete sentence. It's a complete thought. And I really firmly believe that. I think that when you set boundaries, it's really about knowing yourself and communicating to other people what is important. I have learned a lot about healthy boundaries just by teaching. If you start out the year and you haven't explained clearly what the boundaries are, you're going to be miserable. And just like any relationship, it's easier to ease up than it is to get more strict. So at the beginning of the year, I am hardcore. Like any violation, I'm gonna call you on because I want to communicate that this is an important place to be. And this is true of romantic relationships, of family relationships. This is what's important to me, and this is how I am. And so I'm going to find a way to not allow what isn't good for me. And, I do think boundaries can go awry and we start building walls, but for the most part, you have to be really clear with yourself about what is important to you and what is right to you, and stick with that. Another thing I've seen on Instagram, and I saved it in one of my, folders, is my weapon of choice is boundaries. So hopefully, if you have strong boundaries, things don't get to the point where there has to be anything dramatic. Anyway, so I went through these cards, and a lot of cards popped out at me. But, one card that popped out at me, and I have the Holographic Tarot and the Robin Wood because I always compare everything to the Robin Wood, was the Devil. And I think the Devil is an example of no boundaries, right? We have to have boundaries with ourselves. Forget I just said right. That was very Meghan Markle of me, and I'm not looking for validation. Okay, we need to have boundaries with ourselves and with others. And I think boundaries with ourselves is something that people overlook a lot. Maybe I do. Like, setting a strong boundary with myself is sometimes even harder than setting a boundary with someone else. But this card is about sin. And sin is just whenever you go against what you know to be right is sin. I think most sin is probably against ourselves. And so this pops out at me as what we're hurtling towards if our boundaries are lax. There were several other cards, and I tried to pick one from each suit. Which card from each suit just said boundaries? From the majors, I picked Justice. To me, Justice is, of course, a major arcana card, so it's about big topics. And so this is more universal boundaries. this is the right way, the truth, the way things are supposed to be, and what the universe will hold you to. And I think the universe has healthy boundaries, and it enforces these boundaries through, I guess, what we would call karma. You know, you reap what you sow. If you're gonna do things that go against what you know to be right, or what we as a you know, species know to be right, then that's going to come back to bite you. Okay, so let me just start with the cards that I picked from each suit. And some of these, I didn't write down too many notes because I thought, you know what, sometimes I use notes as resistance and procrastination. So I thought I'm just going to push record on this video. The first card that I chose from Pentacles is the Nine of Pentacles. Now, when I think of the Nine of Pentacles, I think of the Robin Hood card with this golden gate. And I think there is a gate in the... Is there a gate in the Rider-Waite? Anyway, this gate has always stuck out at me, and I always envision the Nine of Pentacles as having a gate, even if I can't see it. There's like this golden fence. And sometimes this can be a gilded cage kind of a feeling, but a lot of times this is just guarding what you have worked for. This person didn't get to this station or didn't get to this level of wealth or knowledge or confidence without knowing how to say no, and without keeping whatever robs her of her energy at bay. And so I think the gate, yes, can be sometimes turn into a wall, or maybe keep us trapped if we don't know when to open the gate and when not to open when to keep it locked. But for the most part, I think this is something she has constructed. And then we have the Antique Apothecary. Anatomy. Why do I say apothecary? I'm reading a book called The Apothecary right now. But this is the Antique Anatomy, and the Nine of Pentacles, you see, has all these different views of a skull. It's kind of like being aware. I think it's a really open and positive card, but it has this balanced structure. And I think it's being aware of all sides. It's confidence that comes from being aware of seeing in all directions. This is the Edgar Allan Poe Tarot, and this is based on a short story called The 1002, what was it called? I haven't read this short story. The 1002 Stories of Scheherazade? Nights of Scheherazade. Anyway, this is Scheherazade, and she's married to the king. And to keep herself alive, she has to tell him a story every night that, you know, he wants to know the ending to, so that he allows her to live for another day. And she knows that if she fails at that, she's going to be executed. And on the 1002nd night, she tells him a story that he is not happy with because he thinks it's stupid, and orders her execution. And she's okay with it because she knows she has kept her power. She has not done anything that she didn't want to do. She kind of did. She's going out her way because she knows that she knows the ending to the story, and he never will know the ending. So she's still the one who has control. So the Nine of Pentacles, I think, is about confidence. It's about knowing yourself. It's about noticing, you know what, look at how far I've come, and look at all the things I've built in my life. So I can quit being so hard on myself now, and take confidence from my past successes. Okay, the next one is the Eight of Cups, which I love this card because this is a card of empowerment. And we have these cups that are maybe still full that this person is walking away from, turning his back on, and maybe doing something more difficult, heading toward the mountains, heading toward, inner power, and honoring that feeling of knowing yourself and knowing this is not working for me anymore. Even though I might care about this person or care about this situation or care about this job or whatever, it's not working anymore. And so I need to maybe say no or cut some ties. This is one of my favorite cards in the Antique Anatomy. This is the 9 of Elixirs. And you can see the little messages on it: let go, despair, aura cleanse. I can't read backwards. Soul journey, the void, wake up potion. This really is about waking up to your own needs and prioritizing them. And that is a really strong form of honoring yourself and setting boundaries. And here's the Edgar Allan Poe Tarot. This is A Tale of the Ragged Mountains is the story. Again, I haven't read this one. I've read a lot of Poe, but I'm loving that this deck is kind of opening me up to the lesser known stories. And you have these cups that, there's this moonlit path and he is walking. There's a stream here and these are scattered around. This energy, I love this guidebook, by the way. It's a scattered energy, but he's going through this difficult terrain because he knows that he's heading toward power. So even though it's difficult, he's clear with himself about where he needs to go. The next one is the 7 of Wands. We have this person defending their space, maybe setting boundaries, maybe being clear about boundaries, being clear about what they believe and what they want and what they're fighting for. Here is the 7 of Wands in the Antique Anatomy, and you can see these are called rods, but you can see whatever they are. They look like spatulas almost. But they create this kind of fence, and this plant, which is beautiful, is allowed to grow through it and almost uses that as support, as a trellis to help it, grow and climb. So, setting these strong boundaries, I think, helps us move forward. It helps us be clear about what our goals are. And then we have the card from Edgar Allan Poe, which is based on the Mask of the Red Death, where Prospero has to face the Red Death, and he's, standing up against it. He's being strong in the face of adversity, we could say. Something that's difficult and unpleasant. He knows that, it's worth it to stick to my guns. For swords, I had a really hard time narrowing it down, because I think once you start from the 5 of Swords and work your way up, all of those cards can be about the need for boundaries. Swords, I think, is the one suit that really gives you a lot of warnings about possible pitfalls. And it's like, wake up, wake up. So we have the 5 of Swords here, and I didn't pick the other. These are the only decks that I used for these other cards. But this to me is like, these people really aren't setting clear boundaries. They're letting this person run amok, and no one is saying anything. It's like no one is saying, you're being an asshole. And I think that can be, when you're honest with someone, especially a friend who might be doing something that you can see is hurting them. You can't control them, and they might not be asking for advice, but you can say, you know what, I'm not doing this with you. Or no, I'm not going to enable you to act this way. no, I'm not going to have a drink with you because you might think maybe they have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I'm just spitballing here some situations. A lot of the swords just call for boundaries. We have the Seven of Swords, which can be about deceit, deceiving yourself. And this card a lot of times says to me, it's time to get really clear with yourself. It's time to sit down and have a meeting. Like you and your spirit need to get on the same page. And it can also, I think, being about not saying what the truth is. Kind of a, emperor has no clothes moment where why don't you just, none of us are acknowledging what's really happening here. It's the elephant in the room card. And then I have the Eight of Swords. We could go on to the Nine of Swords and the Ten of Swords, but the Eight of Swords to me, this reminds me of if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. Being really clear about your beliefs and your limits. Otherwise, you're trapping yourself. It's hard to move because you've gotten yourself into this situation where it doesn't feel good to you. And you don't know which way to go because you've gotten off of your own path. So now you're stuck. It's like almost like when you've let someone else's behavior go and go and go, and you feel just more stuck because you didn't nip that in the bud. Some other cards I have are the Four of Pentacles. And this is one of the few cards that I don't really care for in the Robin Hood deck, because in the Robin Hood deck, this card to me just says miser. He looks really unhappy. And these walls to me just say that he is shutting himself off from the outside world. It's almost like, he's just putting up walls instead of boundaries. But this card, I think, is a lot more empowering because there are no walls. It's just strong boundaries on the chakras. So it's almost containing his energy. And it's a very different feeling. And finally, I have the Ten of Wands, which is one of those cards that this is, to me, one of the, you need to learn to say no. Like you need to, one of these wands, pick 5 and say no to those and prioritize what you know to be right for you. Because if you take on everything that people want you to take on, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Okay, these are boundaries cards, and I could, like I said, there were lots of other cards that I could make a case for, but if you have any that just says boundaries or need for boundaries, or these are healthy boundaries to you, drop me a line in the comments. And it is time for smell-o-vision, so close your eyes. I'm going to have to be careful. I'm going to blow this candle out because, I don't want to get so close to the flame. It is so pretty, this color. I just love this color. It's like lavender and hot pink and purpley, and anyway. So close your eyes, and I'm just picturing a koi pond, if you can picture that with me, like being in a little garden. There are fish swimming around. You can hear water rippling, and there are these beautiful flowers, maybe some lily pads. Maybe it has just rained, and that's what it smells like. That is the smell of this candle. If you were sitting by a koi pond in a beautiful garden, maybe you're throwing a penny into the pond, and it's going to grant your wish. And you can see the glistening drops of rain on all of the green leaves. Wow, yes, that's what it smells like. Okay, that's That is some grade A smell-o-vision. Okay, you guys, thank you so much. Like or subscribe, and let me know about what cards say boundaries to you. Bye, guys.